She's not dead. The janitor stops Billionaire's funeral to save her. What happened next shocked everyone. The moment the heavy oak casket was about to be lowered into the marble-lined grave, the old janitor sprinted forward, breathless, trembling, and shouting words that froze the entire crowd. He pointed at the coffin with shaking hands, insisting that the woman inside was still alive, that he had heard something no one else dared to believe. Billionaires, executives, lawyers, photographers, they all turned toward him in disbelief. Rain drizzled over the silent cemetery as the janitor gasped for air, begging them to stop the burial, while guards rushed to grab him. But he didn't let them. He planted his hands on the coffin and whispered the one sentence that shattered every assumption, every belief, and every certainty that the billionaire world had already accepted. She is not dead. If you believe in kindness, miracles, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to KHstories to support more heart-touching stories like this. The chaos began long before that moment. Elena Voss, the woman assumed to be dead, was not just any woman. She was the beloved daughter of one of the wealthiest families in the city, known not for her luxury but for her gentle character, her quiet compassion, and the way she treated everyone, especially those the world ignored. She had often spoken to Samuel, the old janitor who worked in the hospital basement where she volunteered. While most wealthy people walked past him as though he were invisible, Elena always noticed him. She brought him tea on cold mornings, listened to his stories, and thanked him for the simplest things. To her, he was not just a janitor. He was a human being with dignity, and Samuel had never forgotten that. When Elena collapsed during a charity event and was rushed to the hospital, the media declared her gone even before the doctors did. A sudden cardiac arrest, they said. Nothing more could be done. Her family, shattered by grief, signed the papers. The city mourned. The hospital staff whispered. And Samuel, he simply could not accept it. Something inside him said her story wasn't finished. He had seen the gentle rise of her fingers, the faintest twitch on her pale wrist, something so subtle others dismissed it as muscle reflex. But Samuel knew her. He knew she wasn't gone. On the day of the funeral, the city gathered in black. Cameras flashed. Expensive umbrellas opened. The billionaire father stood like a stone carved from grief, unable to find the strength to walk. Elena's body lay inside that polished coffin covered in white silk. But Samuel, who had spent the night near the mortuary chamber praying, had heard something strange, a soft thump like knuckles brushing against wood. At first he thought it was his imagination, but it came again. Weak, faint, but real. The janitor froze, then pressed his ear to the coffin. There it was, a heartbeat, slower than normal but present. By the time they took the coffin to the cemetery, Samuel had reached his breaking point. He couldn't stay silent. He couldn't let them bury a living woman, so he ran. He shouted, and the guards restrained him, but he kept insisting he had heard her heartbeat. The billionaire father looked at him with a mix of anger and desperate hope, unsure whether to dismiss him or cling to the last thread of possibility. Rain drenched Samuel's clothes as he struggled to stand, but his voice never wavered. For a moment, silence ruled the cemetery. Then, with trembling hands, the grieving father ordered the coffin opened. The funeral director hesitated, fearing scandal, but the father screamed at him until he obeyed. As the latch clicked and the lid creaked open, gasps rippled through the crowd. Elena's fingers moved, weak, trembling, but unmistakably alive. Her eyelids fluttered like someone waking from the deepest sleep. Her pale lips parted as she struggled to breathe, her chest rising just slightly beneath the silk covering. Chaos erupted instantly. Doctors rushed forward. Cameras dropped. People cried out, either in shock or relief. And Samuel fell to his knees, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks, whispering thank you to a God he rarely spoke to. Elena was rushed back to the hospital, where the world learned the truth. She had been in a rare cataleptic state, her pulse too faint, her breathing too shallow to detect with normal equipment. A medical oversight had nearly cost her life. But because of the janitor who refused to let her be forgotten, she survived. Her recovery was slow, filled with moments where she drifted in and out of consciousness, unsure of where she had been or how close she had come to disappearing forever. But one thing she realized each time she opened her eyes was that Samuel was there, not as a servant, not as a worker, but as someone who loved her humanity more than the world valued her wealth. As weeks passed, Alina recovered her voice, her strength, and the will to live. The billionaire father, who had once overlooked the janitor the way society often does, approached him with humility. He didn't